Hi, everyone. This is Michelle Rich of the Iowa After School Alliance. I know it says Gracie Bransgard on there, but this is actually Michelle. I will be facilitating today's conversation around how 3 different programs that are in different phases of implementing conscious discipline have done it. So it's an exciting session today. If at any time you have questions, take yourself off mute and please ask them. You can always enter your question on the chat box. Please do that as well, and I can be monitoring that. But today we have a really great session with Melanie Sire of St. Mark in Dubuque, who is our original guinea pig, I guess, around implementing conscious discipline. They've been at it the longest. So Melanie will kick us off. Then we have Cassie Gerst from Burlington Schools, and they're a little bit behind St. Mark in implementing, but have some really great stories to share around how they've done that. And then finally, Loris Osterhaus from Clinton Schools will be with us, and he'll talk about his early stages of implementing conscious discipline. He's been to a few trainings on conscious discipline and has some insights to share from that. So with that, I will go ahead and open up the discussion with Melanie from St. Mark Dubuque. And I'm asking Melanie to give an overview of conscious discipline. Just briefly, in the files box down on the lower right-hand corner, you'll find all the materials that we'll go through today. So if you'd like to follow along on your own, you can go ahead and download those files and be looking through those as we go along. I will try to follow in the screen that you can see, but I would recommend downloading it yourself and having those on hand and keeping them as well. So Melanie, first off, I'd like you to provide an overview of what conscious discipline is and also explain how it transformed not only your program but your own personal leadership style, since we know that really staff are critical in building relationships that are the foundation of a good after-school program. I think it's important to talk about how we've seen program transformation and personal transformation. So I'll kick it off there, and you've got some materials to share as well.
Thank you, Michelle. So conscious discipline is a way of teaching social emotional learning or raising our emotional IQ, and it's based on neuroscience and brain research, and it's all centered around the concept of creating school families, because our brains and our emotional IQs develop in the context of our families from the time we are born on. And so I found conscious discipline before I was working at St. Mark and started using it with my own children, and it was transformational for my family and for me personally. I was raised in a home where my parents used a lot of fear-based parenting, and our family valued obedience, instant obedience, and respect and compliance in children. And so when I had my own kids, if I didn't get immediate obedience and compliance, then I felt disrespected, and I felt like I needed to fix that. After I started delving into conscious discipline, I realized that all behavior is simply a form of communication. So if my children were not being obedient, or they were displaying behaviors, they were communicating to me that they were missing skills. And so my job as the parent, and the way that I should discipline them, is not to punish them for having missing skills, but to teach them the skills that they needed in order to function in our family. And the only way, children can never be in a higher brain state than the parent. And so when I could not stay regulated because I was triggered by their behavior, I would shoot down into the lower centers of my brain, and I would scream and yell. And the only thing I was teaching my children then was how to scream and yell and be upset. But when I learned the skills that I needed to stay calm and to take deep breaths, I was able to move to those higher centers of my brain where I could, first of all, stop taking it personally, and second of all, objectively figure out what skill was missing to them, and then help them get to the higher states of their brain so that I could teach them a new skill. And I can say that with each of my children, I have a 13-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And I did not discover conscious discipline until my 13-year-old was about 9 or 10. And the difference in emotional intelligence in my 13-year-old and my 2-year-old is really striking, because my 2-year-old has had it since birth. And so since birth, our family as a whole has been using the conscious discipline skills, and they're coming so much faster for her than for my older kids. And I can also say that conscious discipline it's for everybody. It's not just for typically developing children and adults. My middle child has special needs, and he was adopted at the age of 5, and so he also has a history of trauma. And conscious discipline was the number one thing that aided his healing when he came to live with us. When he came to us, he was diagnosed as severely autistic, and he was largely nonverbal. But within 6 months of living in a conscious discipline home, he started to speak. He started to engage in imaginary play, and they started to realize, oh, he's not autistic. It's other things. And then as he grew and the longer it went, what really made the difference for him was when he came to St. Mark in the summer and he got conscious discipline in both a home setting and a classroom setting. It kind of clicked in his brain and fell into line, and that's when he showed the most growth. So personally, it has transformed my beliefs and my values, and the way that I parent, the way I interact with my husband, the way I interact in all relationships. And then when I got hired on at St. Mark, and they were already starting to implement conscious discipline, it was very easy for me to help facilitate that. And I will say the more that the admin team members in the office at St. Mark integrate conscious discipline into their personal lives, the more our site staff are able to do it, and the more that social emotional learning happens in all of our different environments. So, is there any questions?
I have a question. How do you see this on a program level changing the lives of your students? I was just at a site visit at your program, and an example would be they were playing a game that was very physical. Not violent, of course, but a physical game, and you said last year before conscious discipline, they would never have been able to play this game because there just would have been too many altercations. They couldn't handle touching. They couldn't handle even playful competition. So what are some other examples from your program that you've seen turn around?
Right. So because we set our programs up to be school families, we set the environment so that the same skills that my children are learning at home, our children are learning in the school setting. And even if they're not learning those things at home, they can still learn them at school. And they come to associate school and program with being a safe place, because if the kids are safe and connected, only then are they ready to follow behavior expectations, and only then are they able to stay in the higher centers of their brain so that they can actually learn. So the differences we've seen are things like that first year that I was on staff, when there was very little conscious discipline being implemented, we couldn't keep a site lead at one particular site. It was a very hard site with a lot of kids with trauma backgrounds, and the behaviors were very intense, lots of physical altercations, things like that. And so we couldn't it was very hard to even set up the site family and begin to build those trusting relationships with the kids because we couldn't keep the staff. And then we had more of we were coming from sort of a 3 strikes and you're out form of discipline and managing behavior. And so what we saw either a staff member would become frustrated with a particular student and find a way to give them 3 strikes to get them out, or else the students would become very frustrated with the setting and with program, and so they would kind of self-sabotage and kind of get themselves kicked out. So when we implemented conscious discipline and we moved to viewing behavior as communication and how can we teach more appropriate ways of communicating and more socially acceptable forms of interactions as far as behavior, it really kind of it threw everybody for a loop at first because it was so different than what they were used to. But over time, as we form those relationships, they learn to relax and to trust. So now what we see with our site families and with all the structures implemented, with routines, with jobs, with rituals, with having a safe spot, with every kid knowing that it's okay to be upset, and this is what we do when we're upset, instead of inappropriate things, little by little, both the students and staff are relaxing, and so now they can have fun together. They can play a game of tag without it evolving into a fist fight. They can get out the sensory bins and have fun, making slime together without getting triggered and going into those bottom parts of their brain.
Great, thank you. Tell me about, now moving into implementing it into your program, the how-tos of doing that. Can you explain how you got started and then what you've been doing to build up to a full integration of conscious discipline?
Yes. So when our director decided to implement, the first thing she did was take 2 admin team members to send to Orlando for the week-long Summer Institute. And she took her person most likely to buy into conscious discipline and her person least likely to buy into conscious discipline. And that was strategic, so that they could have the experience and then bring back what they were going to bring back to see, is this a good fit for St. Mark as a whole? And they came back and, it was unanimous that St. Mark as a whole believed in social emotional learning and was interested in implementing these tools of conscious discipline. So that very first year, after only 2 of our admin members had even heard of conscious discipline, they started small, and they started with the thing that made the most sense, which for us was the safe spot. And the reason being that they chose the safe spot was the brain research and the realization that our kids were getting triggered and going down into fight or flight. And when our kids are in fight or flight, you can't talk to them. There are no words that will reach at them. And so the solution is to, not only that, our staff were getting triggered and going down into fight or flight. And so the solution to that is to teach both students and staff how to breathe, how to calm, how to regulate, so that they can stay in those higher states of the brain. And so that first year, we started very, very slow. The second year, we sent 2 more admin team members, and then that was the year they strategically hired me, who already had a background in CD and a passion for social emotional learning. So each school year during orientation, we will train our site staff in the basic brain research, and then that second year, we were able to implement 7 or 8 of the actual structures. So in conscious discipline, there's 7 powers, 7 skills, and a lot of structures. So the structures are tools for teaching the skills and the powers. So we implemented the safe spot and the jobs, visuals for visual schedules, visual routines. We did greetings, and we did brain breaks. We also had a second CD training for our site staff in February, and that was to refresh current staff on what it is and how to implement. And then also, it's a semester change, so we always have new staff. So it's to kind of catch them up as well. And then the admin staff focus on coaching the site staff when they're out at sites and on hands-on implementation with students. So if we're at site and we see a behavior or we see a conflict, we'll pull the students aside to talk to them, but we'll bring in their site staff as well, and so we'll do it as a whole group. And then, so every year we try to send admin members to Orlando. And then as more and more admin members were trained, we were able to implement more and more structures into our program. So really by summer 2016, we were pretty much fully implemented as far as we were using all of the structures that CD offers, and we were training all of both our summer staff and our school year staff in conscious discipline. I developed some conscious discipline lesson plans that was just an easy way for, especially our summer staff who are already licensed teachers, just a tool for them to take and understand, what the objective is and how we're going to measure it, and then implement those into our programs, and how, and it's just a faster way to get that material, get that knowledge into the hands of the staff so that they can implement it with the students. A big transformation I saw last summer among our staff were it went from head knowledge to heart knowledge. So a lot of our staff this was their second or third year with us, and I watched that transformational process start to happen in them. So it wasn't just a set of rules or a set of objectives that they had to implement during program and a list to check off. It became something that that was making sense, and it was moving from head to heart. So they were, you could see, whereas maybe the first year they worked with us, because we all have triggers, maybe they were triggered by whining, and so when that student came up and was whining that first year, you could see them get flustered and get frustrated at that whining child, and and handle it, but kind of handle it in more of a crisis mode. So last summer, what I was seeing was these same people. The whining child would come up, and I'd see them stop and actually take a breath, and I could visually see it. And then their response to the child was very different because they were staying more centered. So I also saw things like some of the structures that, for some of the kids and some of the staff, the safe spot was just a place to go and play, and it wasn't always used very effectively. But starting about last summer and then into this school year, I've seen the safe spot for, I'd say, at least 90% of our students. There's just a deeper understanding of what the safe spot is. It's not just a fun place to go where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and you're done. They know why. Why are you going to the safe spot? Because then I breathe and then I feel better. Then I calm down, and they understand what it's for, and they're getting to where they can go through the steps of the safe spot without even physically being in the safe spot. So it's becoming more of a way of life and more of a natural reaction to them to breathe and calm before they try to solve the conflict. So then, so where we are now is this school year is what we did that was a little bit different is because most of our staff have a pretty good background in the brain research and in the conscious disciplines, the skills, the tools, the structures. We decided to simplify program a little bit and to simplify what we expected from our lesson plans, for daily lesson plans from our site staff. And they got the same training, and they're still getting on-site coaching. We've added a model site that gets some extra hands-on coaching where we it's kind of our guinea pig site where we encourage them to do even extra conscious discipline and extra social emotional learning and kind of try things out to see how that goes. And then we have, for all our programs, we've simplified their lesson planning so that, our number one priority is the social emotional learning, and that's woven throughout every aspect of program, and that aligns with our mission statement. And then CD, conscious discipline, is one tool for that social emotional learning, but the site staff are encouraged to add in other forms of social emotional learning as well. And so each of our sites looks a little bit different, and it's really fun to watch. One site may be a lot stronger in conscious discipline than another, but to watch each site is still a family and is still doing that social emotional learning just in their own ways. So they're really taking ownership of it and using what makes sense to them, both to them as the staff and them as the students. And then we also, are focusing a lot more on student and site staff-led choices this year as far as activities and what they want to focus on. We have found that because we're not requiring you have to do X, Y, Z of conscious discipline, we found that there's more freedom, and that because they can choose, they're actually probably doing more conscious discipline than when we had actual requirements for it, if that makes sense. They are just happier, both the staff and the students, and they're just gelling better. And so, whereas before we might have required you have to do a goodbye ritual each day, it became, when we required it, it became kind of, it grew stale, and it was just something they had to perform to keep us happy. Whereas now we encourage, and then they take that and they run with it. So now we see that they're creating their own greeting and and their own breathing techniques and their own kind of wish well rituals, and they're taking it and they're making their own. At one of our sites, we have every Friday before snack they dance, and they do line dancing together, and that was something that they came up with all on their own as a way to help them, de-stress, disengage the stress from the day, and unite together as a site family before they sat down for snack. So things like that, and then so we just are going to continue with what we're doing. And now that the conscious discipline is so woven into all of our programs, and it's a tool that we all know so well, we can expand that into looking at what's other kinds of social emotional learning, and what are you already doing that's not necessarily conscious discipline, but that works and that makes sense.
Great, thank you. So tell me what you're looking to do in 2018. Anything else you're looking to do? Because obviously this is a continuing process, not something where you finally come to a point where you can rest on your laurels. So what are you looking to do in 2018?
Yes, you never fully arrive, and you never do it perfectly. And that's okay. So we are going to continue with our on-site coaching, and we really focus in on particular months strategically. So in the months of September, January, and May, you'll find admin team at our sites every single day of the week doing on-site coaching. And that's because that's the beginning of the school year, the middle of the school year, and the end of the school year. And those are times of transition for our students, and times when you have spiked behaviors, and also times when you're teaching. So at that beginning of the school year, we're there, and we're there to teach, and we're there to set up that site school family. And then in January and February, when they've come back from Christmas break, you often have, new students who have left, so it's another time of transition. You also often have new staff. So it's a time where we're there every day and we're teaching. And then the same thing with the end of the school year, because there's, the staff are getting burnt out, the kids are getting squirrely, and so again, it's just being there to be in relationship with each other. We also hold off on our enrichment. We don't do any any field trip type enrichment where they leave sites at that time, because we want to create that safe environment where they feel secure and stable before we have them leave site. And then we did hire another program coordinator this year, so he'll be going to Conscious Discipline 1 in Orlando this summer, and then I hope to be a helper again at one of the satellite locations this summer. And then we're hoping to host more on-site visits this year, so other 21st century programs and people who would like to come to Dubuque and kind of see how our programs run and just get a first-hand look at how we've implemented everything. We would love to do that. And then we'd also love to host kind of a roundtable discussion, sort of like what we're doing now, but maybe even in person, because we would love to hear from other people, how are they implementing social emotional learning? What are they already doing that works? What are they doing with CD? There's so much conscious discipline. Is people are doing conscious discipline, but they're not calling it conscious discipline. So we would love to hear from other programs, what are you doing that works, and and how can we share those resources with each other to kind of to build us all up.
Is that a session at Impact that we could put in?
Yeah, I would think that would be a great time to do it.
Okay.
Because I'm in no way an expert, and none of us are experts at social emotional learning and can claim that, but we're all an expert at something, and we're all doing something well that we could share with each other.
Great.
We're also, and I didn't get this onto the outline, but we are also, several of our staff members are implementing are going through the online e-course that Becky Bailey put out, and that's been very helpful, and that's something that our site staff can do as well. And we took several of our site leads to Middleton to the one-day training they had there in conscious discipline. So.
Great. And just as a FYI, we are looking to bring in Conscious Discipline sometime in March to do a 2-day training in Des Moines. So that's something that I can share with others. Yeah. Going on, what are your tips that you have for other organizations looking to get started in conscious discipline?
So I would say to find one thing that makes sense to you about conscious discipline and start there. So St. Mark started with a safe spot because it made sense to us that if children are in the lower center of their brain, they can't learn new skills or follow behavior expectations. And so we implemented the safe spot because it gave us a way to help the children breathe and calm down and move to the higher centers of their brain. Other people start with the visuals because they're working with special needs kids, and they're already using a lot of visuals, and they understand that children have to see in pictures in order to follow a routine. You take whatever makes sense to you and start with that, and once you grab onto one piece of it, it kind of snowballs, and you start using it more and more. And then the other thing I'd say is that when you're looking at your team of adults that you're working with, everybody is going to fall into one of three categories. They're either going to hear about conscious discipline and think it was the best idea they've ever heard, and they're going to love it, or they're going to be kind of in the middle, and they're going to go, well, things aren't that bad, and that sounds like a lot of work to try that, but, I guess I'll try it. Or they're just going to have that gut reaction of, this is the dumbest thing I ever heard, and it's not going to work. This isn't the way I was raised, and I don't like it. So when you're looking at your adults and where they fall into, which one of those three they fall into, you really want to focus with those who are passionate about it, with those who it just comes naturally to and makes sense, because they are the ones that are going to pull up everybody else. And if you get focused on the ones who are just completely resistant and wanting to sabotage it, you're going to get stuck. And you're going to get stuck in that negative cycle. The ones in the middle are are most likely going to see the excitement of the ones who are passionate, and they're going to start doing it more and more and more. The ones who are just completely resistant are either going to get on board and start to move up with everybody else, or else they're just going to naturally fall away and quit because they're going to realize this isn't something they want to do, and they're just not going to waste their time on it because it's not going to be their priority. So that is something that we have varying levels of people's interest in this and people's willingness to implement conscious discipline in our programs, and we really just focus on the ones who are passionate, and we try to give them extra. Those are the ones we've invited to be in our book study. Those are the ones we take to extra trainings, or that we ask if they want to do the e-course, and we give them opportunities to try it out on site, so even if our site lead is not necessarily the only one planning, following those lesson plans and planning conscious discipline or social emotional learning opportunities at their sites, we let the paras do that as well. It's whatever they're passionate about. We let them take the lead on that.
Great, thank you. Anything else that you'd like to share about conscious discipline before we move on to, it'll be Loris, since Cassie isn't with us yet?
Just that it really is a transformational change that starts with the adult first. And once the adults have integrated it into their value system and their belief system, it then trickles down to the students and then trickles out into the whole community.
Thanks. One last question, and I was going to ask this of everyone, but I'll ask it individually. What has you so impassioned about conscious discipline? What is it? What is that one thing that has really sold you on conscious discipline?
For me, it was moving from a fear-based reality to a love-based reality. So learning the powers and the skills of conscious discipline and learning to see my interactions and my relationships through the lens of love and of missing skills versus bad behavior was what allowed me to heal from my own trauma that I had from my own childhood, and then also to help my own children heal from trauma. And it brought me freedom to I don't have to be scared if I see my children struggling. I don't have to be scared if I'm struggling, because there are skills out there that I can learn to improve things. And then not only that, I have relationships that are based on love and support, and I can go to people, in relationship and seek support and help from them.
Yeah, and you said even parents are now asking about the rituals and methods that you use through conscious discipline. And before we started today, you referenced a book by Becky Bailey, who is the founder of Conscious Discipline, called Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline. And you said it's a really quick read and it's designed for parents. So I think those on the phone or on the session here today, if you want a quick read on conscious discipline that's not purchasing the full textbook like conscious discipline book right now, that might be a good thing to pick up really quickly. And we do have some parents in the audience too that might want a quick read to get started really quickly on it.
Yes, it's a great place to start.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to Loris. Loris, welcome. Loris is the director at Clinton Schools for their 21st Century program, and he's just beginning his journey. So on an opposite side of the spectrum from St. Mark Dubuque, but has actually been to Dubuque to see their programs, has seen a few trainings and taken his staff to trainings. So I wanted to ask Loris to explain up to this point what you've been doing to start integrating conscious discipline into your programming.
We haven't officially started it yet, but where we're at right now, excuse me, my voice is a little hoarse. We've got some stuff going around up here, so I apologize if my voice gives out. Back in, I believe it was September, we were at the training in Davenport where Melanie presented. Myself and two other of our staff attended the training there that day. All three of us, on the way home that night, walked away very impressed with the training and stuff, and something right away that we decided we would like to pursue a lot further. Some of the points that came out of that training there in Davenport that I guess caught our attention was that, it is, very child-focused the way it appears. And the kids are involved, with the process and that. And it, like Melanie just said a couple times, it's not a fear-based thing. Stuff with the kids too, and that was one of the comments that all three of us walked away with that day. And from the presentation that day too, we've done some other research on it too, where it does reduce discipline issues with the kids in your program, and offers, a better learning environment for all the other kids involved as well. From that training, we had some discussion here at a staff meeting back in October on how we wanted to pursue it further, and that included going to the training that Melanie mentioned in Middleton, Wisconsin. I believe that was on October 21st. I know it was a Saturday. I think it was the 21st, where we sent 5 of our staff to that one-day training up there to get some more insight and background into the program and what it would take to get it started. They came back from that training, and those 5 gals, and they said all of them unanimously that it was one of the best trainings they've ever been to. We've sent staff to many conferences and trainings over the years here. They said this is probably one of the best that they've ever been to, and came away from that training even more excited about getting it started here, where they encouraged me and asked me to get in touch with Melanie as a first step there, and to be able to set up a site visit to observe their program up there. And I think we have that scheduled for February 19th, I believe. We went back and forth on several dates and stuff before we settled on February 19th. We're probably going to send a good chunk of our staff up there to observe it that day, so everyone can get a good feel for what it's about, what it would take to implement it, some of the different strategies that would be used with it. And I know Melanie mentioned too a couple weeks ago when we were going back and forth that there would be a training probably towards the end of the school year and stuff. I think it was up in Dubuque, I think she mentioned. And we would be very interested in sending a number of our people up to that training as well. So our goal ultimately is probably to get it fully implemented, maybe at the start of the next program year. Until we get everybody on board and we get all the ins and outs figured out and stuff, and how to get it started, and everybody on board with the same principles and philosophies and stuff. We're looking at probably starting it next program year, probably in August or September. In the training, we will be in Des Moines at the Impact Conference. We'll be sending several people to attend that as well to get some additional information. And Michelle just mentioned possible training in March here too in Des Moines. So we will be sending our staff to a number of our staff to all of these trainings here, so we can, as I said, our goal would be to get it started like in August or September next year. So
That's great.
the initial impressions is it's been very positive for our staff and what they've seen and heard from the different trainings and information they have received so far, and that they are very excited about getting to further implement this. For several years now, we've implemented Love and Logic, which has worked well with our kids too, but this seems to take it another step further and gets the kids so much more involved and stuff, and so much very positive angles as far as discipline goes. So we're very excited about it, and very happy that we've been introduced to it. So I look forward to moving forward with it here.
Great. Thanks, Loris. I know your staff aren't on right now, but it would be great to interview them. What do you know what some of their takeaways were from the training? I mean, they said it was so great. What were some of the major things that...
Well, I think one of the things that came out was just how it's such a more positive approach, with the kids. It gets the kids involved with it. It's not, I can't think of the right word right now. Fear factor, it would be one, but I'm going blank here right now. Just that it's just such a very positive approach. It gets the kids involved right from the get-go, kind of creates a safe environment, a comfortable environment for the kids, and it's less probably confrontational, which, if you try and deal with a kid who's really acting out, so if it doesn't always work real well to directly confront them, but using this approach, they felt, would de-escalate. I guess that's a word, that, de-escalates situations so much more quickly than a lot of other approaches that we use. So, they walked away, I guess, just the primary thing is how much more positive approach it was and how it de-escalated behavior situations so much better and so much quicker.
Wonderful. And yeah, like Melanie had mentioned, I know that you're serving a lot of kids that have gone through trauma, and this really teaches them a whole different approach to their feelings and emotions. And I think because of that, it's so transformative. I mean, it is a paradigm shift for our society, really, to think about emotions as not punishable, but rather a learning opportunity. How can we do something different to get what we want, for instance, rather than being confrontational about everything. So it's really a paradigm shift. But it sounds like there are a lot of supports out there, especially now that we have gotten really knowledgeable about this as a network of 21st century programs. Now we can hopefully, and the support committee is looking at this, how we can offer you more information and resources and support to integrate this into your programming, because we've seen the turnaround at Dubuque, St. Mark, and feel like we can credit a lot of their successes to this framework. So all around, hopefully there will be more supports out there in the coming year for integrating this into your programming.
I know we have a staff meeting again here in about an hour, and that's on our agenda again as to where we want to go next, how quickly we want to get it started. So
great.
They want to talk about it a lot, so good. That's
a good sign, for sure.
It's got many of them excited, so
and
many of them are looking forward to it.
And I imagine for a lot of you, that in and of itself is a huge win. If you can find something that really impassions your staff to work well and work with perseverance and feeling and getting them excited, I think is a huge win in and of itself.
I would agree.
Well, thanks, Loris. I appreciate your story, and we'll revisit your story here in the next couple of months so we can keep up with how you're doing. I don't see that Cassie has joined yet. She did share her schedule. So the CD Summer PD schedule in the files box is Cassie's programs schedule of how they've been implementing it so far. And so that's a really good read. I'm hoping that Melanie, maybe to tie us over until Cassie's able to join us, she had a meeting, so was going to be running late. Melanie, would you be willing to walk through some of this room setup visuals that I have up right now?
Yeah, I can do that.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
So what you see in front of you is you see the posters. Those are the 7 skills and the powers, and they coincide with the 7 books, and it's all color coordinated, so it's super easy to figure out. So in my lesson plans, I've taken each book and made that a week's worth of lesson plans. So the power of perception is that no one can make you angry without your permission. And what they learn when they're learning the power of perception is they learn the skill of composure. So they learn that I am safe, keep breathing, I can handle this. The power of free will goes with the skill of choices. So what you're learning when you're learning this concept is that the only person you can make change is yourself. And so the adults are learning this at the same time that children are. So you're learning to avoid those power struggles, and you're using language like, it's time to clean up. You can start by picking up the pencils off the floor or the paper on the table, which is better for you. And so as you're learning these skills and powers, you're getting a whole new vocabulary that is transformational in itself. Up in the corner that she just circled is the brain state posters, and that's going back to your basic brain knowledge of the bottom part of your brain is the brain stem where you're in fight or flight, and that's your need in that state is to survive. So you're either running away and hiding or you're kicking and screaming. And then you can move up to your emotional state, and that's where you hear all the words coming out. So that's the I hate you, you're stupid, this is dumb, or from the adults, the threats start coming out. You better line up right now, or you're all gonna miss 5 minutes of recess, and that's the emotional state. So there's words in that state, but not necessarily skills. And then the executive state is the part that we would all like to be in all the time, because that's our part of our brain where we can access logical thinking and where we can solve problems. The reality is that nobody stays in their executive state all of the time, and that it takes years and years and years to develop the ability to very quickly move to the different parts of your brain. So our brains aren't even fully developed until we're at least 25 years old. That means a lot of our site staff aren't even experts yet at moving into their executive state and staying in their executive state and getting back to it faster. And certainly not our kiddos. And then the last thing I'd add about that is your kids can never be in a higher brain state than you are. So if you approach those kids and you're in your emotional state, there's no way that they can get to their executive state if you're in your emotional state. Down in the other corner, they have a job board, and jobs are one of the structures. The purpose of jobs is that it helps us all contribute to the school family, and it makes us all useful, and it prevents a lot of behaviors when you know that you have a place in the school family, you have a job to do, and if you're not there, or you're not doing it, then somebody's missing out. Then your school family is missing out, and so it's a way to contribute and be useful to your school family. And you can take the job board that Becky created, and she's got a lot of neat jobs, and then you can make it your own. So our kids in program come up with their own jobs. We have a shoe tire at one of our sites because this person loves to go around and help out the littler ones, make sure their shoes stay tied. We have one of our sites created a newspaper staff this year, and so they have the jobs of reporter and photographer and writer and editor, and they, that just is something that develops from within based on their own interests and passions. And then we have, the door holders and the line leaders and your typical jobs too. So that's a lot of fun. And then that mat in the middle is a tool you can buy for your safe spot. Those are our 4 breathing techniques: the star, the drain, the pretzel, and the balloon. But then, like I said, once the kids get those down, they have a lot of fun creating their own, the dinosaur or the Superman, or they come up with their own breathing techniques. So these are all things you can purchase. And then it looks like here, I really like the way Cassie laid this out, and I don't know exactly, she would be able to talk about this better than I would, but this is something she pulled off of Conscious Discipline, so you can see the skills and the purpose, and then what structures will help teach those skills. And again, I would encourage you to pick one thing that makes sense to you, so if it's the safe spot, why is it you're teaching the safe spot? The purpose of that is to teach that I'm in charge of me. My job is to keep you safe, and you're working on that skill of composure. And all of the Schubert books, the 7 different ones, if you look on the back of the Schubert books, it'll have a lot of that information right on the back. And if you read that information, it teaches you that same language.
And just for those following along, this is shared under the Conscious Discipline Room Setup document.
And then I love this that Cassie put together, because the thing about using Conscious Discipline in before and after school programs is you don't necessarily have your own classroom where you can hang things up on the walls and leave them there throughout the year. So you get very creative in how you implement and which tools you use. So, for example, we have portable safe spots, and we keep them in little drawstring bags so that the kids can put them on their backs and carry them out to the playground or carry them to whichever room they're using that day. It looks like here maybe she has file cabinets for storage, and this is kind of how they've organized their space and a way they're using to teach their staff and encourage their staff to use the different structures in conscious discipline. A pretty standard, greetings is a really easy structure to start with, and that's basically doing a greeting when the kids enter program that involves eye contact, playful touch, and presence, that staff presence. And what it does is it disengages the stress from the kids. So as they, they're either coming from home or they're coming from a school day and they're coming into your program and they're making that transition. And when a staff member calls them by name, makes the eye contact, and greets them in a way that they choose to be greeted, do you want a butterfly handshake or a fist bump? It gives them the ability to transition into your environment where they can feel safe and they can get on board with what's going to happen that day. And then, so all of those, so that's what they do for their greetings, it looks like, and they've added the visuals, which is awesome. And so the staff can wear the apron, and the kids can pick, or they can pick from a picture. Greeting can also be a job that students do.
The apron is a cool idea, so people can remember their different options. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely, especially for the younger ones. The Safekeeper is another staple. Sorry, you switched off. Okay, staple of every program, and the first thing every staff member needs to understand is it's my job to keep you safe and your job to help keep safe. So with the sticks, and we use these too, as they put their sticks in the bucket, when they come to program, they are committing to helping keep safe, and then they're understanding that the staff here are going to keep me safe throughout the program. So I even love, she has the pictures. Those are the safekeepers. I assume those are staff members. And so that's a ritual you want to do every day as part of the program when you greet and you put your safe sticks in. You can also make commitments. So you have class meetings or site meetings, and those are times to go over the schedule. Those are times to talk about any issues and then to make daily commitments. And so the reason you make commitments is because it unifies you as a group. It's not just to fix behavior, but it gives you something specific to work towards. And so these are very creative ways to do commitments, and you can do them, based on age. They can be initiated by the staff, or they can be initiated by the students. A lot of times our staff at the end of the site meeting will, pick one thing, and they'll say, so we're going to work on using appropriate voice, inside voices during homework time. If you're okay with this and you can commit to this, let me see a thumbs up. And then the students will put their thumbs up, and then the ones who are not able to put their thumbs up may stay after to talk to their staff member, and their staff member will say, well, what will it take for you to be able to commit to that? And they'll do some connection with them to figure out, what is it that you're feeling that you can't do your thumbs up. The wish well is a wonderful ritual. It was one of the last ones that we were able to implement because we didn't fully understand it. But a simple way to do it is to take the kids who are absent, and this is a magnetic board, and you can either use their picture or their names, and you can stick it on the board, and you can wish each other well. But it also works wonderfully, and our students have now learned that wishing well is a way of sending positive energy to those in our class family who are struggling. So if one student is struggling, the whole class may take time to pause and put their hands on their heart and breathe and send positive energy to that student. Or they may do it during class meeting. If somebody's worried about their mom or their grandpa's in the hospital, they may take time to pause and send that energy. And the kids really take ownership of that, and it really teaches them positive intent and to look for the best and to look for the love rather than the fear. The job board, I feel like we covered pretty well. Does anybody have any questions about the job board? And the safe place, I feel like we've covered pretty well too. The one last thing I'd say about the safe place is your site staff will always ask you, your resistant ones will always say, I don't like the safe space because they play in it. And what do I do with the kids who want to go there and just play? And to that, I would say the safe place is effective when a child already has a connection with an adult in program. And so if you have a student who is misusing the safe spot, you need to make a connection with that student outside of the safe spot. And once that student feels a connection to you, then you can take that student to the safe place and teach that student how to regulate, and you co-regulate with the student, and you teach them how to use it properly. And then, and then that student should be able to use it properly. The time machine is like restorative justice at its best. It's a tool that you can use, and after a while you get to where you don't even need the mat. You're just doing it naturally when conflicts occur. But it's when conflicts occur between two students or between student and staff. It's a way that you as a whole class family can roll back time, and you can work through that disagreement. And it gives each person a chance to express themselves and say, I don't like this, can you please do this? And it's a way to repair that relationship. And so oftentimes you'll go through it and you'll focus on the one student, I don't like it when you hit me. Please ask me to move next time. And then you can flip sides, and that child can say, well, I don't like it when you get in front of me in line and take my place, please wait your turn, and you can flip it. And it's a way to go back, and I'll say the students love it when the adults model that for him. So so we'll have a site staff, we'll have an altercation or an interaction that doesn't sit well, and then the site staff will say, hey, are you guys willing to do the time machine with me? I made a mistake. And then we'll walk through the time machine with the student and, and apologize and give the student a chance to use his voice and be assertive and say what he didn't like about the interaction. And then, they'll repair that relationship. And that's so, so, so powerful and such a teaching moment for everybody. If you do have space that you can leave up all the time, then there's amazing things you can do with you can do the kindness tree, the celebration, the wish you well. You can also do these portably in a portable way. We do them on trifold boards that fold up so that we can, and then stick behind the cabinet or whatever, and then we can pull them out each day for the students to use. So the kindness tree is one of the jobs can be a kindness recorder, and the students are looking for kind deeds and kind acts, and then they get recognized on the kindness tree. And it doesn't have to be things that happen in the class family. It can be things that happen in the school day or outside of program. The wish well is a way to extend our love and our positive energy to those we're worried about, those who are having a hard time, those who are absent. The celebration star, doing celebrations is an awesome way to unify the school family. So it goes beyond just birthdays and, and we get to get out of school for a break. It goes into, I learned a new skill, or I remember to wash my hands after going to the bathroom, you celebrate. It's one of those organic things that comes from within the students and the staff and what they want to celebrate. And then also say we have started doing this as an administration team this year in the office. We have a wish well tree and a kindness tree up, and it's it's really neat to see it transform the adults in the office, even those who aren't on site every day, day in, day out.
Great, thanks, Melanie. I appreciate that. I will share one more document. I've actually been through this with Cassie. So this is her schedule for implementing conscious discipline, and I don't believe she sent a lot of staff to in-person trainings, but she's been facilitating this process of learning about conscious discipline with her staff. So if you're more interested and have more of a budget to do it in-house, or you have less of a budget and you have to do it in-house, this is a good implementation timeline for you. So this is from Burlington, and it just shows you she uses the DVD set, but evidently it's gone to the e-learning, the online registration. So it's online rather than on a DVD. But she had her staff self-study and then came together to discuss. And so they're looking at week-long trainings, webinars and podcasts, and additional book study. So that's how they've been doing it in Burlington. And I don't believe Cassie was able to get with us today away from her meeting. So we'll go ahead and open it to questions that you might have for Loris or Melanie around implementing conscious discipline. I went ahead and in the chat box, we mentioned that easy to love, difficult to discipline book that's designed for parents and is a quick, easy read. I've put that in the chat box so you can see that there. And it has the author and the title. Any questions for Melanie or Loris?
Hey, Michelle, this is Daryl. I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, thank you for all of you that made the call and made this happen and that shared your stories. At the beginning of the call, one particular phrase that I really like, the behavior being a form of communication. So if as leaders or facilitators, we're supposed to look at the kids' behavior as a form of communication, then for those of you with the experience with practice discipline, what is the ultimate goal for facilitators for them to keep thinking about when they also think about their own reactions as well as other leaders? So I guess my question is around, when we look at kids, we look at their behaviors as a form of communication. That's the lens we use. What are the lenses that we use for the facilitators, but then also other leaders? Thank you.
That's a great question. And for me, that really is the core. So if I can give my kids and the students that I work with the grace to communicate in ways that aren't helpful and to stop and not punish them for that, but to look at that as a missing skill and ask myself, how can I help that child communicate in a way that's more effective and more helpful, then I can do that same thing for myself. And so now I don't have to beat myself up and go back, and ruminate in my head over every little mistake I've made, in conversations with my coworkers or with my husband. And I don't have to carry this chronic guilt because my behavior is communication too. And instead I can look at my mistakes as opportunities to grow and to teach myself a new skill. And so when I get triggered, I can look at that as information. So, whining triggers me, or a coworker who barges into my office without knocking triggers me and sends me into a lower center of my brain. So I can use that information to know that, my automatic response I can teach myself to instead of becoming upset, I can teach myself to breathe and to stay calm, and then to solve that in an effective way. And so I can let go of regret and I can let go of guilt and see that as a learning opportunity for everybody. And the thing that I always tell myself is, and this started with my own kids and my relationship with my own kids, but this is just kind of a universal truth for all relationships, is that it's better to err and repair than to never have erred at all. So in all our relationships, we grow more when we screw up and then we fix it and we repair that relationship than if we were just perfect robots all the time. And our deepest relationships are the ones where we're going to mess up the most, but that's also why they're our deepest relationships, because we repair and we get closer and closer and we grow with each other. So it's the same thing with the students that we're working with at site and with the staff that we're coaching, and with our coworkers.
Yeah, what I noticed most when I was in Dubuque just recently was that the staff were so calm. Even during the tag game, that it was loud and the kids were running around. Some of them were kind of getting rowdy, but in fun. But I think in typical programs, you might have staff very on edge, playing that sort of game. But at Dubuque, they just seemed very even keel throughout the whole program. And that's going to rub off on kids for sure. And it should, to Dow's question, going through this paradigm shift for work with kids should rub off on your own behavior and your own relationships. I could only imagine, because it is so transformative. So I think the same framework that we're using to deal with or work with children can also be used as a framework for working with our peers.
We saw a huge transformation from fear to being able to relax with each other, both at our site, with our site staff, and with each other at the office. Because, you know, it used to be if an admin member showed up at site, the site staff were terrified. Well, what did we do wrong? Who's in trouble? And if a child acted out during that time and there was a behavior, you know, they jumped right to, oh, I'm doing something wrong because this kid is acting up and I'm going to lose my job. You know, and so, and just that chaos. So now, like you said, it's more relaxed. They're not afraid of conflict, because conflict is opportunities to teach. And so if a kid has a behavior while their boss is on site, that's great. It's an opportunity to teach. And then we've really seen that rub off on our admin team as well. You know, we don't live in fear of being fired if we make a mistake, because mistakes are opportunities to learn. And so, you know, we're going to step on each other's toes and we're going to rub each other the wrong way, but we also have an open communication where if I rub you the wrong way, you're going to be able to tell me, and we're going to be able to work on that together. And so our relationships with each other have gotten deeper. And then, you know, the result of that is our work environment is just, we want to come to work. It's a happy place. I love getting up in the morning and on days that I know that I'm going to work. And we've truly created a family here, a work family, where we genuinely love each other and want to grow together.
That's really cool. Any other questions for Melanie or Loris? Great. Well, a few things to look forward to that have already been mentioned, but I'll reiterate them. We do have our keynote at Impact this year is a master trainer from Conscious Discipline. Evidently, she's a great keynote, and she'll be providing several workshops as well. We also are looking to put in a roundtable for people to discuss their social and emotional learning activities or strategies, with Conscious Discipline being a part of that. And then before Impact, in March, we're looking to bring in Conscious Discipline for a 2-day training, hopefully. And United Way of Central Iowa will be co-sponsoring that, so I just need to finalize the details with them to finalize the training and dates. So we'll get that out to the whole 21st Century Network when that's finalized. I want to thank our presenters today, Melanie and Loris. You're really paving the way for a lot of programs. There's obviously a lot of interest, and I know others will be listening to this on the recording. So I appreciate you being willing to share, especially Melanie. You've been presenting quite a bit for us over the last few months, and we really appreciate you sharing your story, because I think the more people hear about how successful